Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about 10 core signs or sort of symptoms in a way of a fear of commitment. So these are behavioral patterns, not necessarily like belief patterns at the root level, but things that you can see in your behaviors or patterns that may show up in your life that may be pointing to you fearing commitment. Now, keep in mind, it's not necessarily commitment objectively that we fear. It's like the meaning we give to commitment based on our past subconscious experiences with being in very intimate or committed relationships. And also keep in mind, as I go through these 10 major signs, each of these signs individually is not necessarily only because of a fear of commitment, but often points in that direction. So the more you see a bunch of these for you, it may be related to deeper fears at a subconscious level about intimacy, commitment, closeness, even things like vulnerability in general. So sign number one is you find yourself staying out of relationships for long periods of time. Now, keep in mind too, it's like our relationship to why we do these things that really matters. Like if you decide that, you know what, I just got out of a long relationship, I'm going to spend at least a year just focusing on myself, figuring out what I want, doing self-work, doing personal development work. That's really healthy. That's great. That may have nothing to do with the fear of commitment. But if you have a history, for example, of like, oh, I've been out of a relationship for 10 years, I'm afraid to date, I don't like being in relationships, or perhaps you've dated, 2 or 3 months here and there, but then there's long periods of time in between where you're not in relationships, there could be fears there at a subconscious level contributing to that if that's a major pattern. Number two, self-sabotaging relationships. So every time you find yourself really getting close or feeling like you're really interested in somebody, you suddenly find yourself pushing them away. It's usually not the person you're pushing away a lot of the time. If you have a pattern of that, it's often the fears that person ignites in you at a subconscious level, again, because of past experiences. And again, we want to make sure that the decisions that we make in our lives are based on truth instead of fear. Right? So what we want to be able to do is if we see any of these patterns, we want to be able to find out what we're actually afraid of. Are we afraid of the vulnerability? Are we afraid of being left? Are we afraid of being abandoned? Are we afraid of being too close and then being hurt, of our trust being betrayed, right? Like what are those fears so that we can reprogram those fears? And then we come towards commitment from a place of neutrality. And then we can decide, do we want commitment or not based on truth, based on like what we want for ourselves at this period of life, based on like what's actually true for us, not based on being driven by these past subconscious fears running the show. And if you ever want to do work on like belief reprogramming and finding in each area of your life what your limiting beliefs are in like career, financial, mental, emotional, relationships, everything, a really great course you can check out for free that I highly recommend is the Emotional Mastery and Belief Reprogramming course. And it will take you through all those different areas, help you discover your limiting beliefs, give you really powerful tools for subconscious reprogramming so that in all areas of life, you can come towards your relationship to your career, your relationship to money from a place of truth instead of fear, and from a place where you can realize your potential, because our limiting beliefs often create these glass ceilings for us. And when we feel stuck and we don't know why, and we feel like we're not breaking through something, there's almost always a subconscious pattern that needs to be recognized, reprogrammed, and then we remove that glass ceiling from our lives. So back to all this stuff. Reason number three, or symptom number three, is if you find people ghosting when a commitment is required. So suddenly going missing when it's like you're about to make plans, you're about to plan ahead for something, or there's a more serious conversation that's taking place that could lead to a commitment, and suddenly someone pulls away and just goes offline for long periods of time, obviously pointing in the direction of fear. Number four, pushing away in general when someone gets too close, especially when there's like an opening up or a lot of connection, sometimes like suddenly dropping off for a couple days after a lot of connection in a short period of time. Number five, vulnerability hangovers. And these three sort of go hand in hand here, like the ghosting, the pushing away when people are too close, the vulnerability hangover. But you'll see like there tends to be, after there's an openness, often people who experience vulnerability hangovers feel a sense of shame. And it's usually not because objectively and consciously them opening up was shameful, but usually because we have stored subconscious wounds about ourselves in childhood. And when we become really open, we become vulnerable, we open up, we really let ourselves be seen, then usually afterwards those core subconscious wounds kick back in, and it's like, oh no, I'm shameful. I don't want somebody to truly see me because they won't like me, or they'll see that I'm defective at my core, or that something's wrong with me, or all these beliefs that we tend to acquire from just trauma of neglect in childhood. Number 6, resisting opening up. So just altogether resisting vulnerability at all. Number 7, resisting making plans in the future, resisting talking about like vacation plans or following through on seeing each other if you're in a long distance relationship or dynamic. And again, it can be because there's like enmeshment fears. It can be because somebody feels not worthy, not good enough. It can be for many different reasons. But if we're seeing that this is a pattern, especially when it's going hand in hand with some of these other potential symptoms, usually there's some kind of fear or negative emotional associations or beliefs associated with commitment overall. Number 8, a lack of being able to progress the relationship. Pretty self-explanatory. Number 9, a lack of someone taking the initiative. And number 10, feeling like somebody is really closing off to you. It can be really challenging when we see these symptoms and these dynamics. But what I would always say in terms of how to solve for this stuff is for us to be able to open up, talk about this stuff. The longer we have been getting to know somebody, or we're in a relationship dynamic with somebody, we have to set our boundaries. We have to speak up. You have to get to the bottom of what's going on if you're on the receiving end of this, or if you're somebody who sees a lot of these patterns in the relationship to yourself. The more conscious we become of these things, the more we investigate why, the more we work through them, the more we break free from these different dynamics that are probably plaguing our life in many other ways as well. Because these things can come into like our job life, a fear of commitment to making a budget and sticking to it, in our financial life. Like it can come up in so many different arenas. But if you're in a relationship on the receiving end of this, it's important to just have a conversation and ask what somebody feels about commitment, what they're open to in the future, so that you can make a decision if that's a healthy relationship for you to stay on based on what you need as well, and that both parties can come to the table and communicate. So I hope this all makes sense. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want to do some work on reprogramming limiting beliefs in any area of life, you can check out the Emotional Mastery and Belief Reprogramming course for free for 7 days. Click the link in the description box below. Thank you so much for being here and for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video.